In today's video, we're looking at ticket number 12980, and it's a Getac Toughbook laptop. I've never personally worked on one of these. I know Sean has quite a few times, and one thing I do know is that they are quite expensive. I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe they're diagnostic machines. Issue with this one is that we have three USB ports. Two of them are 3.0 and one of them is 2.0 that are completely battered. One of them is on a little separate board like this, so obviously that's not looking great. And then the other two are actually on the main board. We have this one here, which is almost like missing a pin at the end, or the pin is broken. And then if we swivel it around, we have this one here, which is also mashed up. I'm just going to start with a little bit of theory crafting as to how I'm going to get these ports off. So I believe it's just this one. Yeah, it is. It's the one I've got my finger on, which also has the capped on tape. Actually, I'll leave that there as a reference to show that that's the one that I need to take off. Method wise, I'm thinking best bet is potentially just some leaded solder. I don't have low melt solder because otherwise in this scenario, I think low melt would have been the way to go because they're all through hole connections and they're all visible. There's no like hidden solder joints or anything. So just applying low melt, mixing it with the unleaded that we have on the board, I think we would be able to pry off this connector. But we have the plastic connector here, which is very, very close. So I can't just come in simply with heat. I'm going to have to cover this up. I'm still going to apply leaded solder on this one specifically, just so it makes my life a little bit easier. This USB port is fine. And then for this one over here, again, we have plastic right next to it. So same method, I believe, a mixture of leaded solder with the unleaded that we have on the board. If I look at the other side, is that going to be any easier? Can I just apply heat? No, I can't, because we've got the headphone jack here as well as another plastic connector. So I can't heat from this side of the board. That is definitely a no-go. So again, I think just covering over this connector, leaded solder and blasting it with heat should get off this port. Sean has done a video on this before. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link to that in one of the cards in, I believe, this corner, I think. It's like I've never done YouTube before. So you can see Sean's method compared to mine. I think he likes to use wick, a lot of flux and just get it all off the board. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just different. I just find that method a little bit messier. There's a lot of flux that gets involved on the board. And personally, I think you might be causing a little bit more work for yourself, whereas the method that I use with just the dropping on and dropping off, and I think you just might be making the job a little bit more complex. But like I said, no right or wrong way. Who knows? My way not even work that great because I've not worked on these boards before. I do think the actual PCB is quite thick, hence the name Toughbook, but we will soon find out. Starting with this one then, just applying small amounts of flux and getting our leaded all up in the grill. Again, I actually think low melt solder would have been perfect for this job. And I do need to get some, I just keep forgetting. There we go. And whilst I'm here, two birds with one stone and whatnot, take off the capped on tape. Clean as we go, so again, I'm just using my cotton swab here whilst the board is hot to get rid of this flux that we have. Not to get rid of it completely, that's not the aim, it's just to, again, just keep it tidy. Especially with the connector right next to it, we don't want that flux traveling across and going inside the connector, making everything all sticky. Same with over here. I'll take these over to the heater and get them removed, and I'll be back with you in a second. I'm not going to go massive here, I do think a little bit of protection is going to be needed, but I think we'll be okay, to be honest. And the same just for this bit over here. There we go, so that's nice and covered now as well. I think we'll be fine. Again, it's more so, even if this is a little bit loose, just to cover up this connector. Okay, I'm going to take these off the board. Try getting it off. I put a lot of heat in and I didn't feel comfortable with how much heat it was taking. So I'm actually just going to try and wick it off instead because the board is now very, very hot. It's got the leaded solder mixed with the unleaded. So let's try that. So in an attempt to pull this off the board with the heat, the headphone jack fell out. I don't know how, because I didn't pull on this or anything, it just fell out. And there's no unleaded solder here, so I'm just carefully now going through this and wicking it instead. Seeing if I can get a majority of it out by wicking first, which I should be able to because the board is still relatively hot. And those holes are clearing nicely actually, just through wicking. Good so far. Nice. Just try and get those ground holes clear. These ones on the side. Let's just clear this up, just because, again, it's looking quite messy. I want to see what I'm working with. I've got the headphone jack here, and luckily we don't have any burns or singes on it. I'm going to apply hot air on this again now and see if we can get the rest of it out. There we go. A little bit of singe on here, but the tiniest bit. Maybe even just discoloration, really. Just suck up the solder in this one. Get it nice and clear. Nearly. Nearly. Just thinking about it. Turn it over. Test. Okay, all right, so I had to step away. I've come back, and I don't think that I recorded any of that, which is amazing audio-wise. Video-wise, we had it, but I did turn off the mic and forgot to put it back on like an absolute egg. Quick pause here. I actually had to modify one of the USB 3.0 ports because we didn't have the one we needed in stock. This job needed to be done quite quickly, and the only port that we could find that was compatible was from AliExpress in China. It would have taken a few weeks to get here. They couldn't wait that long. So I went ahead and just modified a USB 3.0 port. Okay, so I was able to find another port, which is this one here, but I've bent the legs out, so they actually go over the ground holes that we have, meaning I'll be able to solder them to ground. They just don't actually go through. The length of the port is exactly the same as the other one, so we're not going to have any issues about this poking out too far. And if I turn it around, one of the main concerns was that the pins wouldn't come through enough. If I put the board at an angle like this, you can see that they're coming through more than enough. So I shouldn't have to worry about any connection issues either. So I'm just going to really quickly secure the port here with ground. Get our flux, we'll do this side and this side. Give it enough heat. That's holding that in place now to make sure it's nice and secure. Good. Same with the front ones as well. There we go. Look at that. It's not going anywhere. Nice. Exactly the same on the other side. And just down here as well. If it binds to this, perfect, as long as it doesn't actually affect the screw hole. There's a little bit of a lump on here, so what I'll do is I'll just take some braid and just make sure it's not going to affect the head of a screw or anything, which I don't think it will, but just to make sure. However, we have now lost a little bit of solder here. So let's put that back. There we go. Now we just do the back of the port. Again, because of OCD, I'm going to go over these and just make sure that they have what looks to be some solder. And just go over the power and data pins. There we go, lovely jubbly. Get rid of the flux we can. There we go, how's it look? Yep, nice. Good stuff. So that port is solidly on there with all the pins connected at the bottom. probably just put another dollop of solder in the middle one, because you can see that it's not come through all the way on the board. So just to make sure. The only thing we have left to do is to put that headphone jack back. I'm going to apply some flux and flood it with leaded solder to make it easier. Put a little bit of solder back in this one. Sometimes they can be stubborn. That's why I kind of work to the others first, and then come back to the ones that I can't get. Take a little breather, you know, and then we try again. There we go. Get rid of all of that nasty burnt flux. I should just be able to put that headphone jack back on. Just make this area a little bit fluxy first. I've just had to put one of them on the bottom left one because it kept falling out. So I've just put it in place there. Not going to work for the other side because that might be hot. And when I put my iron on, it might fall off. There's a lot of small components around this area, so we do need to be careful with the iron. There we go. Should be good. Right. Another clean up quick. And then we have it now. It's pretty much just for testing. So we've replaced this USB port here. Again, this is now nice and strong. We also replaced this USB port, which again will be nice and strong. And this one, which was on the solo board. And we had to do a little bit of modification on this one. But again, it should be nice and solid. I'm going to hand it back over to the technician to reassemble. And then I will confirm shortly if it works or not. All right, so the motherboard was put back in the chassis. However, one of the ports didn't fit, and it was the one that was on the additional board. So this is one of the ones that I had to modify. I've got the port the right way around. However, this is the new one. This is the old one. So I don't know if you can see, but what's meant to happen, if I show you from the side, I guess, this port, which is the old one, actually sat down a lot lower. So the old port was actually in line of the PCB like this and sat, as you can see, a lot further down, whereas this one is like almost at the middle of the PCB, maybe even a little bit further up. It doesn't fit inside the chassis. So I have found another USB 2.0 port that I'm going to put on now, and hopefully that fixes that. Well, this one was actually sat in the archives a little bit because of the fact I didn't need to replace the port. The customer who owned the laptop was just like, don't worry about it. I'm happy with 2 working boards on the main board, which was the 2 USB 3.0 ones that we replaced. So I didn't actually have to replace that port again, and the customer was happy. Something a little bit different, a very expensive laptop, and quite tough with the amount of plastic that we had around the areas, but nonetheless, we got the job done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.